17th, PFF Forecast. We're going to talk a little Jalen Ramsey. We're going to do the lock of the week. And we've got a good story from the Cincy Y. So we're going to talk about all the games, but the most important games at the front. So let's get it going. I want to talk about Jalen Ramsey, but you said something that we just have to address immediately.
What's that?
I don't know if I've ever actually seen an overweight vegan, but you brought this to my attention, and I'm struggling to comprehend. How does that happen?
I think it very easily happens.
Really?
Right?
So explain this to me. So you
well,
make the decision.
isn't like because we were talking about somebody who's running for president currently, right?
Who proclaim themselves a vegan.
And he proclaimed himself a vegan, and I asked myself the question is like how much is the veganism being adhered to if somebody is not like thin?
I don't get it. Why would you punish yourself to like eat healthy, and then all of a sudden just goes to waste? So what are you eating if you're a vegan and you're overweight? Are you just like pounding an absurd amount of vegetables?
No, I think it would be like the almond butter.
Ooh.
You're just smashing almond butter.
Just nuts for days. All right, that's how you get into a Thursday morning podcast. News that actually matters in the NFL. Actually, you know who's vegan is Cam Newton, and he seems to be in decent shape.
Oh, sure.
Well,
sure,
except for the
Arian Foster,
thing.
except for the occasional chicken sandwich.
Except for the injury thing. Myles Garrett, who probably is in the best shape of any human in the NFL. I don't know if he's vegan or not. But he got punched in the face yesterday, or as he called it, a love tap, by a fan. Also, did you see that? They called him a fan. Can't really be a fan if you punch someone in the face, right?
Although we know some Browns fans, and they are irrational enough to punch a player in the face.
If I came up to you and punched you in the face, you wouldn't be like,
yeah, big fan.
Big fan.
He just wants more. He just wants to challenge him.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Jalen Ramsey gets traded to the Los Angeles Rams for 2 firsts and a 4th, I believe, was the compensation. So the Rams no longer have any first-round picks until Jared Goff's contract is up. They trade away Marcus Peters. They get Jalen Ramsey. So my first question to you is, was this a panic move, or was it one made with sound logical reasoning?
I think it was a panic move.
Explain.
Well, I mean,
because I agree.
There are a couple reasons why the Rams would make this move. We just saw our colleague Kevin Cole tweeted out when Demoff talked about this idea that with this new CBA, there's less time to develop players, and it takes 3 years worth of what it used to be to develop a player in terms of practice time. I get that. I understand that. But I also think that the league is changing to a point where the Chiefs' offense is very similar to the Texas Tech offense. So do you really need as much practice time, and is it worth the additional salary you have to pay veteran players? So I still side on the fact of young, cheap talent matters. And a lot of young, cheap talent matters. Spread out your risk. Right now, the Los Angeles Rams are taking a huge gamble that Jalen Ramsey is not only going to be worth what his salary will end up being, but also the value of those multiple picks will be. So from a football perspective, I don't like it. From a understanding that the Rams have already left LA once, and you're building a stadium, and you're competing with another team for that city's fandom, and you're also competing for the fandom of a bunch of there's media in LA that you're competing against that people in Minneapolis, St. Paul are competing against, right?
Really?
So I get it.
Can you expand more on that?
I get why they did it from the perspective of they need to make a splash. It's just
that's
it.
That's all. You could have stopped there. That's the whole reason they've done this. There is no way that they're ready to make it back to the Super Bowl given the way their offense is currently playing and the way that Jared Goff is playing. Period. Point blank. Just no chance. They could add the 5 best corners in the NFL. It's not gonna matter. But this is a reaction to what was an inflection point for the Rams organization. They make it to the Super Bowl last year. They're a play away from having a legit chance to win the Super Bowl, right, if Brandon Cooks comes down with that. They are hosting a team that is undefeated in their own division, who last year was god-awful. Yep. And they were visitors in their own stadium by a country mile. That was all Niners fans, and the Niners ripped them to shreds. and they are building a huge new stadium, I'm not sure if you know, where the Super Bowl is going to be hosted. And they have to take every shot in the world to be relevant in that stadium next year, or else it is going to be an absolute disaster, because you can't play 16 road games a year. You just can't do that. So that is why it was a panic move, and that's why I understand where they're coming from. Was there another player that you were going to get on the market in your mind that helps them more than Jalen Ramsey?
No.
Trent Williams?
Trent Williams could, but they already have a left tackle, right? So where does
put him a right tackle?
Right, and their issue is not the Rams' issue offensively is not their offensive line on the tackle. It's the interior of the offensive line stinks, and Jared Goff is not responding to pressure particularly well. Ramsey certainly helps, especially in the short term. But the other thing that makes us curious, and I think our friend Evan Silva said this on Twitter yesterday, is that Ramsey has a ton of leverage over the Rams. Mm-hmm. Like, if the Rams don't give him the best, the highest deal of any defensive player in league history, he doesn't have to play for them, right? And you just dumped a bunch of draft capital on this player.
Now, I can't imagine they're not planning to do that, right? Which is also a curious move, because what we know about coverage are two things. It's massively important, right? So if you want to predict winning, it is the most important component on the defensive side of the ball. But it's also very hard to actually predict how well it is going to perform from week to week. So it is both valuable but also hard to pin down, which emphasizes the importance of spending cheaply on it. So you want to spend draft capital that's valuable, but not necessarily the money on the back end. And this is the opposite of that, right? They are paying a ton of draft capital, but also basically being forced to pay him a ton of money to a position where, look, the list of cornerbacks that have been Hall of Famers and then the next year been terrible is a lot. Now, I'm not saying that I think Jalen Ramsey, I think Jalen Ramsey is that Stephon Gilmore level of corner that you invest in.
But in terms of production, we're talking about a very good year in 2017, the better part of a win above replacement. Last season, less so, and this season, less so in the 209 snaps he's played. He's a very talented player, but again, the issue is, and we talked about this with plenty of teams that trade up, right? This idea that a player is going to be good is egregious with a draft pick where you're not paying a lot of money to him. It's even worse sometimes when it's a veteran player and you end up with not only the contract but also the issue of you're foregoing the opportunity to take a bunch of swings at the plate in lieu of a player who's great but doesn't play a particularly stable position.
They're also the third best team in their division right now.
Well, this is the thing that I don't understand is that if you any sort of formal any handicap of this division, I think when I looked at the betting markets, they were plus 400 to win the West. So implied probability of like 20%, right? We actually have them a lot lower at 7% just because of the way the schedule works out and everything like that. And that's not even to consider the fact that even if you win the NFC West, you're not getting a first-round bye all the time. So, like, if you want to win the Super Bowl, you're asking me to say, okay, let's get a wild card and go on the road 3 times with Jared Goff in January. No sale for me. That's the really hard part is they're taking a very speculative leap, and the problem is if let's say they finish 9-7 and out of the NFC playoff race, that's a decent finish, right? That's a carry the 2 6-4 finish for them. And that still isn't good enough, I don't think, right? Because the LA bar is very high, and so I get where they're.
Oh, it is.
I get where they're backed into here, but I also don't understand, their logic in terms of where this should go.
What is also clear, I've been telling you this for a while, because having lived in Los Angeles, the healing powers of the West Coast. The best coast are many, and you as someone that occasionally has a calf cramp or a little back ailment, the sea breezes can cure those pretty quickly.
I've never not enjoyed LA.
It's amazing that his back is perfectly fine. Jalen Ramsey is in my list. I think I always talk about this group of my favorite players: Deshaun Watson, Alvin Kamara. I think Jalen Ramsey's in there. I don't know. I just like him.
Yeah, so and to sort of maybe feed back into this, sort of revisiting our 10 picks from earlier in the season.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it's sort of interesting to see. Like, I picked Andrew Luck, who no longer is in the league per your prediction. I also picked Russell Wilson, who's probably the MVP of the league, and but at the same time, like, it's interesting. At the beginning of the season, we had higher marks on guys like Mayfield, guys like Beckham, guys like Ramsey, and some of those things haven't shaken out. I took Travis Kelce as my tight end, and so far he's been kind of meh. So it's kind of fun to see, who's emerging in the NFL, who's sort of regressing a little bit. I think Ramsey is somebody who will be very interesting to see. Like, he's somebody, as you said, is the favorite player of a lot of people, and does he live up to it? We'll get to see it in broad daylight here.
In broad daylight, yes, because the sun shines out there. Okay, that's enough LA talk for one podcast. So here's what we're going to do for the games this week. We used to go in just order, and the problem is there's too many crappy games. That's just so we're going to pick there's only a few games that we really have in contention for the lock of the week, deserving of putting money that may go to that if we win will go to charity.
Break our losing streak of lock of the week as we were 2-1 last
Another
week.
reason that the Rams are just a disaster is they apparently did not want to donate to charity, could not cover against the Niners. Obviously, they couldn't even win. And so we're trying to get back off the shine. So the Rams, not in consideration this week. But we're going to talk about those games first. Then we're going to pick the lock of the week will be, holy cow. Then we're going to go over the rest of the games kind of quickly. And we'll close out with the Cincy Y. Sound good? All right, Thursday night, your Chiefs going into Denver. Now, this line has moved quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And I think, to me, I have a kind of bold take here. If I'm the Chiefs, I am considering resting Pat Mahomes.
In this game. I mean, you gave me a lot of crap on that Sunday night game when we were working and they were like really struggling. I said, forget it, put Matt Moore in.
Right.
This he doesn't
I gave you a ton of crap.
Yeah, he's not moving well. This game's over, blah blah blah. And now, because we still have the Chiefs with about a 70% chance to win to go to the playoffs, win the NFC West, frankly. Because the Los Angeles Chargers were their main contender, probably still are, and they're 2-4. Mm-hmm. The Oakland Raiders are the only other team with a winning record in this division, and they still aren't particularly good. Denver, 2 wins in a row, but have Joe Flacco at quarterback.
This is fact.
I think this is a kitchen sink game for the Chiefs.
Oh,
win this. I think you win this game, you get the 10 days off. You get Packers on Sunday Night Football the following week, which is a game that will be a marquee game.
Yep, game of the year potential.
I think if you're the Chiefs, like, this game is not a must-win game, obviously, but it is far more of a must-win game than last week against Houston was. Just because Denver is a team that is significantly worse than you at the most important places, and you're coming. I mean, you have to restore order here in the AFC West.
Yes, and I just think that Mahomes doesn't look right. His ankle is messed up, and he's just battling through it. And if you want to win a Super Bowl, you can't let this linger throughout the whole season. You have the Packers coming up. That is selfishly a game that he has to play in because it's against the Packers and it's on Sunday Night Football. And if he doesn't, I might, go pay a call to Patrick Mahomes. But I think they could beat the Broncos without him because it's a kitchen sink game, and Andy Reid is so good at play calling that I think he could legitimately do it.
The hottest take of the day is that Matt Moore versus Joe Flacco would give the Chiefs a win. I love it.
Because is there that big of a difference? And you have Andy Reid calling plays if you have Kelce and Hill out there, maybe Sammy Watkins, he's probably out. Yeah, he's out. But if you have those two guys and Matt Moore and Andy Reid, I think you can beat the Broncos.
Here's the thing about the Chiefs that if you're a Chiefs fan, should give you hope, but it's also something that should concern you. Patrick Mahomes over the last 3 weeks has not been an MVP candidate.
Right.
He is in the bottom half of the league in terms of producing negatively graded throws. He has struggled under pressure. He is not healthy. And like you and I both thought, okay, this team, as far as, perturbations are concerned, can score with Byron Pringle at wide receiver, can score, with Tyreek Hill out, can score without a left tackle. And the fact of the matter is some of those things have started to have an impact on the Chiefs.
So what I'm leading up to in a very long-winded way is that if I think the Chiefs can beat the Broncos with Matt Moore at quarterback, I do agree that 3 is probably a little short, given that Mahomes, even at maybe, say, 75%, is going to play. And as you said, it's a division game, so there's an element of kitchen sinkness to this that will probably be at play. So the line is currently 3. That's down from, the look ahead was close to 5. I want to say it was 4.5 earlier in the week. It is steamed down. And
it was at even money at -3 just up until last night. Last time I looked, it was -105. So there's certainly still more of an appetite for the Denver Broncos, even money line or spread here.
And the thing is with the Broncos is they're a team that will take advantage of where the Chiefs are just deplorably bad, and that is they can't stop anyone running the football. So if the Chiefs, this is the issue. If you all of a sudden aren't good in the passing game and you can't score 5+ at will, it's easy, because they struggled to get to 24 last week, then you can lose to a team who is so bad that their best facet is running the football.
Yes.
And that is what the Broncos can do. So that is why my hesitation is there at 3, even though I do think, look, the Chiefs are a dramatically better team than the Broncos.
Yeah, and I think there's another handicap here that I think we have to be considerate of. Thursday Night Football, it doesn't always favor the home team. It favors the better team. And Kansas City is better at the 2 most important places, which is quarterback, of course, and more importantly in this spot, head coach. And now Vic Fangio is a very good defensive mind, but they have gotten healthy over the last 2 weeks playing a team in the Tennessee Titans who couldn't score if you and I were the 2 cornerbacks with the opposing team, and a Los Angeles Chargers team who, I'm sorry, but if you add in injuries and their coaches' ineptitude, are one of the biggest lemons in the NFL. So
lost to Doug Hodges, man.
And Denver has lost at home to Jacksonville and Gardner Minshew. They've lost at home to Mitch Trubisky and the Bears last second. They've been competitive in every game, but this is, if I'm looking at, okay, what's the additional half point I need to be able to bet this game -3 for Kansas City? It's that very point. Thursday Night Football, the more prepared, the better team, generally speaking, wins those games. And for all of Kansas City's faults, and talking about the Chiefs defense on the ride in today, there are many. The Chiefs have that advantage.
There is one injury question that I have before I want to move on. I know Emmanuel Sanders came out, but I don't see him on the injury report, so I guess he's playing. But that if he were to somehow not be playing, that'd be bad. Anyways, move on. I think this is one worth considering. That's an actually somewhat compelling game from a watching standpoint. Here is a compelling game from a betting standpoint. It will not be compelling from a watching standpoint, and that is the Miami Dolphins traveling up north to New York to play the Buffalo Bills. The Bills, hold your nose here, are 17-point favorites.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, and
and Fitzpatrick starting.
Yeah, I mean we're on the side of the Dolphins.
Can you guess?
Yeah, and
can you guess that we don't like Josh Allen as getting as a 17-point favorite?
Right. And the issue is of course, if you look at this, we actually got a better number with Miami once Fitzpatrick was inserted. He's been worth, in terms of WAR, neither one of them are worth a lot, but he's been worth 3 times as much as Rosen in half the number of snaps. He's actually been, bad, but in a way closer to replacement than Rosen has been.
Rosen is the lowest graded player from a clean pocket.
Right. And Fitzpatrick's not much better, but at least he has as many big-time throws as turnover-worthy plays. Rosen, very few there. But you look at, okay, so what's bad with Miami? Okay, Miami's averaging negative a quarter of a point every time they run the ball, negative a third of the point every time they pass the ball. That's not good.
It's bad.
Buffalo, though, is averaging both negative EPA per run and negative EPA per pass, and much like Miami, is worse passing the ball EPA-wise than running. the thing that I wonder here is if the Dolphins score one touchdown, is this cover for the Bills insurmountable? And I gotta think it is.
So Josh Allen has an 87 passer rating when clean, a 50 passer rating under pressure. He's making a turnover-worthy play 3 times as often as a big-time throw.
Yeah.
So let me put it to you this way. Would you like the better quarterback getting 17?
That's what I think. and I know all the other
and
stuff.
I don't actually think that going forward, Josh Allen is a worse quarterback than Ryan Fitzpatrick. But in this season so far, I don't think it's egregious to say that Ryan Fitzpatrick has been as egregious as
if
Josh
I had
Allen.
to choose between Josh Allen and Ryan Fitzpatrick moving forward, I would jump in front of a bus. But
which one are you choosing
for
here?
this one game? I do like, in terms of, I think Fitzpatrick's a better player right now, and you know,
it's getting 17
It's
points.
getting 17 points again, and we're going to talk about this with Washington because we almost wrote up Washington this week for our spread picks article. There aren't a ton of reasons to bet. You know, this isn't a bet a team situation. This is bet a number, and this number is far too high. You know,
the tough thing about this,
hard to say much more, honestly.
The tough thing about this is that we actually had a conversation about the run game yesterday, and it's like the run game can make you look really dominant when the other team is a total joke. The Dolphins fit that bill really, really well. The Bills are coming off of a bye at home. So the potential for them to do this, hey, we're just going to run the ball 60 times but actually score points, is there, whereas you never think about that when both teams are kind of equal or both teams are good. And here's the thing. The Bills scored 17 points against the Jets. They scored 28 against the Giants. Giants are very bad. Bengals are atrocious. They scored 21 against the Bengals.
And the Bengals backdoored them in that game, almost won.
Yes, they scored a whopping 14 points against the Titans. They have not played, aside from the Patriots, who held them to 10, they have not played
a good team,
a halfway decent defense, and they have crossed 20 convincingly one time. They got to 21 another time. Other times, they haven't even scored more than 20 points.
Yeah.
So if I tell you, hey, they score 21 as a max, do you think they're going to cover 17? Are they going to shut them out?
And that's the thing people want to talk about. So whenever I tweet out the coaching rankings, people are like, what about Brian Daboll? He's doing great. And it's like, well, I mean, I guess they're not a complete disaster. You know, Josh Allen's not throwing a pick six every possession, but they're not good. They're not moving the ball. They're not so, again, not much more to say about this game other than Fitzpatrick has the potential to score. Let's say if the Dolphins score 10 points, I think that this game is coverable. If they score 14, I mean, you know, there's even a chance they win this game outright.
I was literally about to say,
Yeah.
if we're sitting here on Sunday afternoon and I tell you the Miami Dolphins just beat the Buffalo Bills, are you falling off of your chair?
No,
You might be already off your chair because of other reasons, but that's not the reason.
Yeah.
All right. From one very, very stinky dog to a second. And this game is one that is near and dear to my heart because my Niners, they're paving the way for me to spend February in Miami, and I just can't wait. I've got a couple of pairs of board shorts I'm excited to dust off that I had to put away for the winter here in Cincinnati. The Washington Spreadskins were 10-point underdogs at home against the 49ers. The 49ers obviously crushed the Cleveland Browns on Monday night after that long break. They then went into Los Angeles, brought all of San Francisco with them, beat the living hell out of the Los Angeles.
They renamed a few streets Haight-Ashbury.
Beat the living hell out of the Los Angeles Scams, and now parade their way. They're now marching to Washington to take over the nation. So it's now 9.5 because 10 is a lot for a home team.
And we were thinking about having this as one of our article picks, but then it moved to 10, and that's just not like the 10's a key enough number where I'm just not comfortable.
But I wanted to revisit because I just think this is an awfully tempting place to say, hey, maybe the Niners and Jimmy G, who has not been a world beater, they don't lose this game, but it's one of those games where at halftime it's like 7-6 Redskins. You're like, oh, wait, what? and then the Niners find a way to edge one out at the end.
Well, and so again, and I'm with you 100%, but this is also a game, talking about the Niners, traveling West Coast to East Coast, playing at 10, less of an issue than it was before. Joe Staley, right? Mike McGlinchey, Kyle Juszczyk. Those are part of our handicap last week, so it didn't matter.
Yeah.
But George Kittle, groin injury, questionable. D Ford, quadriceps, questionable. D Ford's always been the kind of guy that can come up on an injury list and hurt you that way. Kawan Williams, questionable.
Do you know what position he plays?
Akello Witherspoon is out with a foot injury. This is a game where the Niners can confidently probably say, okay, we could sit a bunch of guys and still have a 67% chance to win the game, right?
Easy.
And so I think they probably do, right? They're smart. In which case, Washington's live here, right? And we've seen Washington, even though they stink, no doubt about it. They got out to a big lead against Philadelphia on the road week 1, came back and backdoored a 10-point spread here. They got a touchdown at the end against Dallas that pushed that game over. Didn't quite cover the spread, but still, solid. They were plucky at home against the Bears after getting behind 28-0. They came back and made that into a game. Keenum trying to do the goal line quarterback sneak at the 20-yard line. Washington is not like Miami. They're not
clearly not. They're a full point better.
They're a full point better, but they are not a team that's going to quit. And especially with a head coach who's just in his second game here, there's tons of opportunity for Washington to just play this game straight up and possibly win, but also to come through the back door should they be dominated the whole game.
Well, here's the thing. The total on this game is low 40s, and the Washington Redskins are going to try and keep this low scoring, obviously. So when you say to yourself, hey, do low scoring games often have this 10-point margin, particularly for the road team? It's less likely than with a very high scoring game. So I think that has to be taken into consideration. And here's the other thing. The big difference for me with the Dolphins and the Redskins is that the Dolphins defense, it feels like they're playing with 10 players on the field. That's not the case for the Redskins, who actually have a kind of average-ish defense, and a quarterback in Case Keenum who has a penchant for making those what-the-hell throws, but has a guy in Terry McLaurin who's a legit receiving threat, a top 5 guy in terms of wins above replacement so far this season. He's been amazing. And with all of those corners out for San Francisco, if I tell you, hey, Terry McLaurin gets one big play in this game, don't you feel fairly good about them?
He's been worth a quarter of a win so far this year. And reminding people, they had New England on the ropes for 3 quarters of that game. They didn't cover, right? But they basically played straight up with New England that entire game. And McLaurin was out. And McLaurin was in last week. He turned, I believe it was 6 targets into 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, Keenum's throwing a lot of YOLO passes, but against a defense like the Niners, who are great rushing the passer, maybe a little bit suspect in terms of personnel and injuries and coverage, it might be the trick.
All right, next up, we keep this one in consideration. We have 2 games that are actually worth really watching because they're good games, and so I'm excited to debate these. I think one of these 2 will end up being the lock of the week, but I really don't know which one. The Saints go to Chicago. They're getting 3.5 points against Mitchell Trubisky and the Chicago Bears, fresh off of a bye. And I have said this a couple times already today, but the better quarterback is getting points, in this case getting more than a field goal. And the number 2 team in the NFL with a better quarterback is getting more than a field goal.
The best team in the NFC and the Saints, with Teddy Bridgewater, have won 4 consecutive games. They've done it every which way. They had to score against Tampa Bay. They played defensive games the rest of the time. This is a good spot, I think. You're getting either 3.5 plus minus 120 or 3 even. So, I mean, it's hard. Chicago's coming off of a bye. The Saints are on their 2nd consecutive road game. So those things help Chicago a little bit. Total on this game's 38, so they certainly expect a Vikings-Bears type of performance or a Jaguars-Saints type of performance. But I just look at this game and I ask myself, with Akeem Hicks out, how much different are the Bears defensively from the Saints?
I think this is the key. The New Orleans Saints have a very good defense. The Chicago Bears have a very good defense. But what really matters here? What really matters is how good the offenses are. Because in order to win games, I don't know if you know this, you got to score some points.
Got to move the football.
Now, in the year the year of our Lord 2019, all quarterbacks have basically been awful, with exception for like Watson and Russell Wilson, the MVP. So the bar is not very high. But let me tell you who sails under the bar, and that's our main man, Mazda Mitch. Right? He is, he was injured, but before that, it was an absolute disaster. Only Josh Rosen is a worse grade from a clean pocket than Mitchell Trubisky. Whereas Teddy Bridgewater has by no means been extraordinary, but he's middle of the pack. So he's definitely the better quarterback here. Yep. And he has the benefit of Sean Payton with the best tackle duo in the NFL. Yep. So if you say to yourself, hey, how do I envision the Bears just steamrolling the Saints here or winning by a touchdown?
It's things that aren't attributable to Teddy Bridgewater. Turnovers.
It's Khalil Mack coming off the edge, and you figure the Saints will mitigate that. And I also think there's a lot of worry about Alvin Kamara. Now, I think he probably grits it out and plays, but even if he doesn't, so if you hear that he's not going to play, do you think the line could move for running back? I think it might for Kamara.
For this particular running back, it's possible.
And I just said Kamara is certainly in my list of like 5 favorite players. I love the dude. He just posted an Instagram video, by the way. You should go check it out, of him catching like a baton while standing on a physio ball with basically like light distorting goggles on, so you like can't see anything. And it's hard enough to stand on solid ground with those, but he's literally standing on a physio ball doing this. You should go check it out. Anyways, what we do need to remember is that, look, he was a 3rd-round pick that didn't do a whole lot of exciting things in college that, could propel him into the top couple of rounds. So as great as he is, Sean Payton's offense will elevate whoever he puts in that role. You might see a little more Taysom Hill, perhaps, right? But he is going to have guys in a position to make these moves. And so I would not be, as much as I think Alvin Kamara takes their chances of, winning, say, a Super Bowl down, should they get to that point. In this game, it wouldn't worry me as much.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where the Bears, how much do we really know about their defense, right? They gave up 400 yards to the Oakland Raiders, right, with a running back in Josh Jacobs who is very Latavius Murray-like, right? Downhill. Their defense is a fast defense that is, good in coverage, but sometimes soft. I do think Kamara is a huge downgrade to Latavius Murray, but I think in this particular spot,
you mean the other way around?
Yeah. The Bears aren't a team that's going to have issues there. The Saints defense, though, you look back at this, and again, you look at season-long numbers. Sometimes they're a little bit misleading. The Saints defense gave up over 400 yards to Houston. Well, Houston's a good team. They gave up a lot of yards to the Rams. Whatever. And then the Seahawks game, they gave up over 500, and that was because they were ahead and the MVP of the league sort of chunking them back. But in the last 3 games, they've given up less than 215 passing yards in each game. And it's not against, Tampa, Dallas is a good offense. Tampa Bay is a good offense. Like, the Chicago Bears are not a good offense. And, so again, it comes back to me, if Chicago is going to boat race the Saints in this game, it is going to be because of turnovers and short fields for Trubisky, much in the same way
that they did it last year.
As they did with last year, and they did it with the Vikings, for example, when they're winning 16-6. Bridgewater, for all of his faults, and one of the reasons I really hope they win this game is because
2 gloves. Is that?
Well, I just don't want your skepticism towards Teddy to be reinforced by this game. So, but of all of Teddy Bridgewater's faults, one of them is not being a turnover-worthy type player. So, I think they at least keep this close. And if you're somebody who likes to dabble a little bit with money line, I think there's a really good chance New Orleans wins this game outright.
Okay, the Sunday night game, a Eagles-Cowboys matchup. We just published our picks column. And I have a little treat in there for you guys. You may have forgotten. I reminded you of this. There's a little treat in there for you about the Eagles and the Cowboys that'll make your Thursday feel just a little bit extra special. I was reminded of it yesterday, and I watched it, and it reminded me of a happier time in life and in history, and so I think you should go check it out. Anyways, I won't spoil it there. What I will say is that the Eagles are getting 3 points on the road against the Cowboys. Doug Peterson, one of the favorites of ours, has already come out and said, look, this is
must win.
This is a must-win game for the Eagles. Now, the Eagles have a ton of injuries, right? So they've got Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson looked like he was going to open up their deep passing game, gets injured, and now Miles Sanders is their best deep threat, which says something about Miles Sanders and says something about the rest of the receivers on the Eagles. Jason Peters is doubtful. Andre Dillard gave up as many pressures in 34 snaps as Peters had given up all season in that last game. So there's a lot of reason to be worried about the Eagles. But I think you can make the argument that there might be more for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, you look at – I didn't even know Zach Martin was questionable with a back injury, but let's assume he plays.
Maybe you should go to Los Angeles for a quick minute.
Smith and Collins are – probably not going to play, right? Questionable here. And even if they do play, they're going to be negatively impacted by a defensive front of Philadelphia that is very stout. Amari Cooper, ankle, quad, calf kind of thing. He hasn't practiced yet this week. They got Gallup back, and he was great. But then Cobb, again, he is also questionable. So there's probably equal a number of injuries on both sides of the ball here. And so where I take this then is where we always take it, coach, quarterback, right? And there's absolutely no comparison between Doug Peterson and Jason Garrett in my mind. Kellen Moore has sort of shown that, yeah, it's cute that you can take an entire offseason and game plan against 3 bad teams, but when the bullets have fired the last 3 games, he has not been as good. And, of course, Dak Prescott has been good, and I think very encouraging so far, a 121 passer rating from a clean pocket. Carson Wentz has been better. Carson Wentz is one of the highest graded quarterbacks in the league.
Second.
He's not getting the type of support, whether it be drops from his receivers, but those things tend to regress. There's a chance Deshaun Jackson plays. I would imagine no, though.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But Aguilar and Alshon Jeffrey and Ertz are good.
Goddard has been good.
Goddard has been good enough, and then, as you said, Miles Sanders. So if you just look at this entire thing and the fact that Dallas's home field is never as good as sort of it should be for America's team, I think the Eagles getting 3 points here is a solid pick.
I'm going to read you some numbers. This is the play action rate for Dak Prescott each of the weeks this season. 47%, 39%, 32%, 20%, 18%, 14%. Now, the interesting thing about play action is regardless of the depth of drop back, so regardless of how long developing the play is, it buys you more time. In other words, the quarterback will spend more time in a clean pocket at all depths of drop. And yet they are running way less of it. And yet Dak Prescott is considerably better from a clean pocket. That's where he ranks 3rd in passer rating. Where he falls in comparison to Wentz is when things break down. So in a game where there are injuries across the board, I expect there to need to be a lot of plays made by both quarterbacks. Dak was under pressure, a career high rate against the Jets, over 50% of the time. And I want Carson Wentz every single time when things are not pristine. Amari Cooper either being limited or out is the key here for me. Because without him, they just don't have anyone that's going to get open enough for Dak to throw them the ball in a bad situation and to take advantage of the Eagles, who looked awful against the Vikings. You need a Diggs and a Thielen who are just roasting Rasul Douglas every time you run play action, which the Cowboys do not want to do. They are not running play action anymore.
They seem to think that play action success is cheapening their ability, because they have in the last 3 games not run play action basically a third of the time they were early in the season.
Well, you need to establish the run. Everyone knows that.
And I know this is somewhat laughable, but Jalen –
hold on. I got to say this. So everyone talks about you got to establish the run to run play action. That's mathematically false. You don't have to. The Cowboys are averaging 4.1 yards per carry over the last 3 games in the first half, right? So think of that as establishing the run. The team with the best yards per attempt off of play action, the Seattle Seahawks with Russell Wilson, they're averaging 4.3 yards per carry in those same situations, a whopping 0.2 of a yard more than the Dallas Cowboys. So I ask you, is there failure to run play action because they can't establish the run?
I think in their own mind.
Yes, self-fulfilling prophecy.
So
it's amazing.
So here's the thing. I think Jim Schwartz is a good coach, and I think that the Vikings offense. They underestimated the Vikings offense. We saw it with the Zach Brown straight up said, like, I want Cousins to throw the ball.
And he was an abject disaster in that game.
Yeah.
He made Kirk Cousins look like Michael Vick a couple of times.
And Diggs and Thielen are far better than whatever Dallas is going to throw out there. Cousins, when things are going right, I think can be every bit the quarterback that Prescott can be.
I actually think they're very similar in that both do really well. That's a
crazy
comparison.
Structure.
When things are great,
They're both
good. They both hold on to the ball for way too long,
Yep.
have not great pocket presence. Is Kirk Cousins Dak Prescott?
Other than Prescott adding value on the ground, yeah.
And being like a cool dude.
Yeah, and not being lame
having a
as
commercial.
Yeah. So Jaylen Mills comes back this week. As bad as he can be, he's better than Rasul Douglas, right?
Who, by the way, is only like really bad off of play action.
Yeah.
Like he falls for the play fake somehow, some way.
So there is a better than average chance that the Eagles will somehow figure this thing out defensively.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, I think if Philly is average defensively on Sunday, they win this game outright.
I am with you.
So I think I got this thing whittled down to 2.
The last
week.
two.
Yeah,
right?
New Orleans and Philadelphia both getting 3. Well, actually, New Orleans getting 3.5 if you want to. And when I look at this, I think to myself, I think Sean Payton is so much better than Doug Peterson at calling plays.
Yeah.
But I think the Eagles are so much better than the Dallas Cowboys at the overall, like, just structure of things.
Mm.
So it's really tough to pick here because I do think the Bears, like, Nagy's great. We haven't seen the regression in their defense except for the Oakland game so far this year. So whereas I can see Dallas just coming up, it comes up snake eyes for them on Sunday, and they just get whomped. In which case, be kind of fun. It'd be nice to have the +3 in that case. Whereas, is there a situation where New Orleans just absolutely shows Chicago the 50 states?
Well, yeah. It's interesting because for that to happen, you've got to have classic Mitch Trubisky. But actually, classic Mitch Trubisky gets super lucky in all these situations. So I don't know. I am really torn here between the two. The extra half point is nice, though the juice makes it basically the same.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the harder ones because I think that the narrative around the Eagles with Carson Wentz and the way the market views Carson Wentz is that he is not, he's not having a great season. And this is an opportunity for us to take advantage of the fact that we grade every player on every play and know that he has been awesome and that he does things in out of structure situations far better than Dak Prescott does. I want to take advantage of that. And I like the spot a little bit better, right? The Saints are traveling again. They're coming into a place that will be – there are not going to be a lot of Saints fans in Chicago. I'll tell you that right now. There will be some Eagles fans in Dallas.
Yeah. I do think home field for the Bears is far less trivial than it is for Dallas. The Bears are coming off of a bye. I do think that often causes more rust than it does rest. But New Orleans is traveling off of another physical game. They're on a 4-game winning streak. You're basically buying the Bears at the bottom, the Saints at the top at this point. In the case of Dallas and Philly, you're selling Dallas at the bottom, but you're also getting Philly at their bottom too. Like if Philadelphia goes into Minnesota and wins, I think this game's a pick 'em. And so you're getting 3 points based upon an effort against the Vikings that had a lot to do with them just being unprepared, in my opinion. So I lean Philly.
Yeah, I think I want to go Philly too.
Okay. Go Eagles.
Here's the tough thing for me is that last week Philly was one of our super contest picks and it didn't work out.
But that's a perfect example of something to to go with, right?
All right. So Philadelphia is the
except
lock.
Falcons.
It's the lock of the week. Hopefully they care. I think Doug Peterson hates cancer. He's going to put in an extra special effort here so that we can get back on the donation side of things. Hopefully you're doing that as well. We're going to speed through the rest of the game. So what we're going to do for these is we're going to talk about where the line in the total is, anything that really strikes us, and one like crux to the game. But it's going to take minute-ish.
Not very long.
All right. So the Rams go into Atlanta, who somehow still has the same coach. The Rams are 3-point favorites, and they have Jalen Ramsey, who is back with a back.
Yeah, I would say the Rams are nothing here. Jared Goff is going to – well, let's just predict something. Jared Goff is going to dominate the open spaces that are the Falcons' defense in a dome, and the narrative is going to be, look at Jalen Ramsey, motivated the Rams. So that's how I see this happening.
The best offenses in the NFL are ones that have just played the Falcons.
Yep.
The Jaguars are going to be here in town. Gardner Minshew and I are going to be hanging out.
Chuck Norris.
Yep. He'll be the second coolest person in Cincinnati.
Thanks for the
After
shade.
You. The Bengals are 3-point underdogs at home. They are an absolute disaster. They can't beat anyone. 3.5-point underdog. And the total is at 44. I'm going to go ahead and say there's probably some value on the Bengals at home. If you had to choose a side, that is where I would go, but I would not touch this
I
game.
wouldn't spend my money or anybody else's betting the Bengals in this game. Let's move on. The Detroit Lions, who should be in first place in the NFC North, are now in last place. They're at home, getting 1.5 points. I've actually seen it all the way out to 2 in some spots against the Minnesota Vikings, fresh off of a huge victory against the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a must-win for Minnesota.
Yes. I have a couple of things. First off, go to pff.com/greenline, and you can see, get an elite subscription, you can see all of these things. This game offends my sensibilities and is one of those situations where I think we are going to be on the complete opposite side, which probably tells you a few things about me as a person. But I would go check this game out because it's a little different. My inclination would be that the Lions at home as an underdog is a steal given what happened to them on Monday night. But you may feel differently.
Well, we talked about this actually internally the other day. The home field advantage comes from referees mostly. That's
they've got to get a couple buybacks, right?
You'd think, and again, we've argued at times that the Detroit Lions are a better version of the Vikings. Now, I think the Vikings might be a little bit more explosive than the Lions, but I stand by my statement that the Lions' defense is very good. Their special teams have been a problem, the 12 men on the field, the returns, and all that kind of stuff. But I think this is a must-win for Minnesota. If they lose, they are 0-3 in the division, in a division that includes a 5-1 team and what could be a 4-2 or a 3-3 team. So this is a huge game in the NFC North, and I'll be interested that whatever happens in this game will have interesting implications on the NFC.
It's going to be fascinating. One of the games that I wish was more interesting from a gambling perspective, because it will be one that I'm excited to watch. I think that the way that the Vikings offense looked against the Eagles is drastically different than how it will look on the road against the Lions. Matt Stafford is the better quarterback.
Kudos to us for having identified Justin Coleman as one of the best UFAs, because he is.
Packers
Raiders. At home after being communists and wearing road white on Monday Night Football. They will be back in green.
Heat. I thought we weren't going to talk about China.
Sorry. They're hosting the Oakland Raiders. This game opened about 7.
Mm-hmm.
I had written it down. We had liked the Oakland Raiders at 7. It is now all the way down to 5.5, in which case it's a better number, I would say. Total on this game, 47. The Raiders are coming off of a bye. We're seeing this a lot. The schedule makers for the NFL, nice work, guys, but the Oakland Raiders are coming off of 2 weeks off. Packers are after a Monday night. We've seen this a number of times. There's an advantage here for Oakland despite the travel, despite the time zone thing, just because of rest.
Yep. I want to fade the Green Bay Packers after that performance against Detroit where they should have lost the game, obviously. And unfortunately, you are losing a couple of key numbers with it down to 5.5.
Yep.
If it gets bought back up, I would certainly consider going back to the Raiders. That's why you want a subscription, so you can go check it out.
The Detroit bet was such a good one, even all the way down to 4.
I know.
The Raiders one was only a good one, I think, at 7, maybe 6.5.
Colts,
this game.
Texans. This is going to be a fun game. Jacoby Brissett and Frank Reich at home. They are favored by 1. Totals at 47.5. The Texans have scored a ton of points, but the Colts are the exact opposite, right? They plod their way through the game. So it'd be interesting kind of bashing of two styles of play. Do you like the model is fairly ambivalent. So if you have to pick one, which side are you going with?
Yeah, Houston, a double winner this week, decision of the week, biggest mover of the week for AWS. I like Houston here. I like everything about the Colts, and I like one thing about Houston.
Yes, I'm with you. Deshaun Watson all the way. I love that guy. Man, That guy's awesome. I just really hope he doesn't get injured. Cardinals, Giants. Giants are favored by 3 points at home. The Cardinals are, as I just spoke about, a great offensive team now that they have played the Falcons. They also got to play the Bengals.
Yep.
Back-to-back weeks. That's wonderful before Christmas even. Total is at 50.5.
And has moved up.
Has moved up a little bit. And so I think the value, I don't think. I'm just reading what the model is telling me. A little bit of value on the under here, which is counterintuitive to, I think, both of us because both of these defenses are bad. But is Saquon back?
There have been a number of games
Saquon's back,
that these two teams have participated in that played under and ended up going over that I think might be influencing what's happening right now. The Giants game against New England last Thursday night played under, and because of a bunch of defensive touchdowns, went over. The Cardinals game against the Bengals, the Cardinals games against Detroit, and the Cardinal game against and then the Cardinals 2 games against Seattle and Baltimore all played under, and those went 2-2 to the under. So I think that there's a little bit of validity here in playing an under game, especially now that Saquon Barkley's coming back. And as bad as the Giants defense is, they're not as bad as the Atlanta Falcons defense, and that differential might be enough to slow Kyler Murray and company down just enough for this to be a game played in the 20s and not in the 30s.
Let's get this game out of the way quickly. The Los Angeles Chargers and the Tennessee Titans do not watch this game.
Yeah.
And if you want to know, actually there might be some ways to bet it if you are forced to watch it. So go to pff.com/greenline. But you couldn't pay me to watch this game.
Yep.
The Baltimore Ravens and the Seattle
Seahawks. You can pay me to watch this game.
This game will be fascinating. A couple of really exciting quarterbacks. Russell Wilson, the MVP of the NFL at this moment. The Seahawks are favored by 3 points. This one just barely didn't make the cut for considering a lot.
Well, because the number was 3 and now it's 3.5. Now it's 3. So it's sort of in that no man's land of where the number ends up being.
But I want to discuss this game a little bit because there is a really interesting contrast of styles here, with Russell Wilson being the best passer in the NFL, them not passing as much as they probably should. The Ravens have a quarterback who isn't an elite passer, but is so elite running the football that they are able to generate value running the football with him, and so they do leverage it. They are averaging almost a full tenth of an expected point per run play, which is ridiculous. The Seahawks are negative a third of an expected point per run play. That tells you how efficient Lamar Jackson is running the football. And the Seahawks defense is no longer one that scares you in any way, shape, or form. So I think there's a little bit of, well, hey, the Ravens haven't looked great, but you really want to bet against Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, I mean,
Earl Thomas revenge game?
We talked about the Lamar Jackson, 152 yards rushing, only 30 after contact. They are not passing the ball as much, but their run plays are a lot like passes in that the yards before contact can be viewed as yards, air yards kind of thing. Especially when a guy like Jackson has
a great comparison. It's fraudulent enough to offend my sensibilities, but also accurate enough to be awesome.
Because like with Lamar Jackson has the ball in his hands 7 yards downfield, it's sort of like a receiver having the ball in his hands.
Yeah. Well, right, but the difference is that he has to work a hell of a lot harder to get there.
He's running a route with the ball in his hands, and there's a chance that he'll get tackled beforehand.
The way that he makes people miss, though, is really incredible, and it reminds me, I once was doing something on Michael Vick. I think it was actually for Sunday night, and I was curious because I had the same idea.
That's right. We had
about yards before contact, and Michael Vick, I can't remember which year it was.
2010.
Yes, averaged 7. I think it was over 7 yards. It might have even been 8 yards before contact every time he ran with the ball. And I thought this was the most amazing thing ever because it spoke to me about how damn fast he was, right? The guy's so elusive. And no one thought it was that cool because everyone likes yards after contact. I'm like, no. You know what's cool? Not being contacted.
Yeah.
And Lamar Jackson has a little bit of that vibe. So,
and unlike running backs, the quarterback, I think this is a skill that a player possesses. As running backs, yards before contact is mostly noise.
Well, because
and the offense he plays for.
Because it's so reliant on the scheme, and with the quarterback, a lot of it is, well, we're going to open up some space, and then if you can take advantage of it, right? And the space is dictated by like misdirection instead of the blocking in a lot of cases. People are going to yell at me for my.
So the issue here is that both teams I think are a little fraudulent. I think the Ravens, when you look at their quality of wins, they beat a Bengals team that's they beat a Steelers team with 2 backup quarterbacks. 2 losses were not, especially losing to the Browns at home by multiple touchdowns does not look good in hindsight. And then, Arizona has emerged lately, and the Dolphins are not really an NFL team right now. So they have a lot to prove here. But the same can be said about the Seahawks. I mean, the Seahawks should not have won or covered in Cleveland last week, and we'll take it. But, it wasn't Baker Mayfield, 3 interceptions, Freddie Kitchens, taking a timeout and then challenging a play and then running the ball out of like 30 personnel or whatever, 32 personnel into into a wall on 4th down.
Wasn't great.
The catch by Metcalf that sealed the game wasn't a catch, right? Like all this stuff. Seattle has had some like kind of false wins, and if you look at you add up their WAR, they're probably 2 wins of luck so far this season. So that being said, Seattle's a tough place to play football, and I think the home field advantage is more than 3. So if the market says the number is 3 here, you're assuming the Ravens are better than the Seahawks. And I fundamentally reject that on the basis of both defenses are bad, right? Ravens defense, I think, is one of the worst in the league in terms of yards per play. Seattle's not much higher, but then it takes you back to the offense, and Russell Wilson is so much better at this point than Lamar Jackson, as good as he is, and to the point where he's overcoming a bad scheme. So I think Lamar Jackson plus scheme is good. Russell Wilson minus scheme is still better. And in which case, I like Seattle to at least win this game. I don't know about laying the points, though.
That is the way that I would go, though. If I had to choose one side of the 3, I would take the Seahawks. And that is where Green Line happens to be as well. We have one last game. This game not anywhere near as exciting, so we will go back to being swift. The New England Patriots are traveling to the New York Jets. The Jets looked great against the Cowboys, and my question to you is, do you think they will look great against the Patriots?
No.
Okay, so the Patriots are, is it 9.5 still?
Yeah, it was 10, I think, earlier in the week.
Now it's 9.5 because of the Sam Darnold love.
Darnold looked great on Sunday.
I got to be very honest with you. I am usually the person that is all about taking the Patriots on the big number. This is one I'm not touching.
Me either. I especially road. I don't think and the Patriots have not been impressive in terms of offensively. Mm-mm. So, and that's going to be like, so you're hoping that you see what you saw on Thursday Night Football, which is interception touchdowns, which are just not something blocked punts for touchdowns. It's not something you can really buy into long term. Darnold looked terrific against Cowboys. Not only deep, but in the intermediate areas. Yep. He handled pressure extremely well. I got to see it against a team like the Patriots before I'm really bought in. And so this is a game I'm going to watch and I'm going to enjoy. I just don't think I'm going to have any investments on it.
This number gets out to 10. I'd be curious what Greenline says. So go to pff.com/Greenline. Get yourself a subscription. That is week 7. I'm excited for week 7. Some really good games. Sunday night's going to be good. Thursday night's going to be good. A couple of good afternoon games. And then Monday night is compelling. We're almost there. We're almost to Thanksgiving when the season actually starts. It'll be fun. Stories from the Cincinnati Y. I was hesitant about telling this story. This story comes from my apartment gym, which actually has developed a couple of stories in its day. And it's not a story about the guy who I saw in the gym yesterday for 30 minutes who did one set of bicep curls the entire time that he was in there. This is so there are a couple of ladies that come into the gym basically every time I go in there. And it's, about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And they take up an inordinate amount of space, and they don't do a whole lot of anything. But I applaud them for being in there. It shows great dedication. They're in there just about every week. And so I'm in there the other day, and there are a couple things that really irked me. And the first is they take up all the space, not doing a whole lot. They don't pick up anything. So I'm crammed in a corner trying to, grit through a workout here. And then all of a sudden, I just hear this cackling laughter. And it continues. And they're just laughing hilariously every 5 minutes about something. And I am glad they're friends. I'm happy they're working out together. Can you just shut up? Is that too much to ask? There's no music that plays in this gym. I do not wear my headphones because I don't want to break them and I sweat too much. And so I have to listen to the cackling. And the worst part is they are saying things first before they cackle, and I have no idea what they're saying.
Yeah.
And then
you think they're laughing at you.
I think they're laughing at me,
yeah.
And maybe it's pushing. I don't know. But here's the topper. All of a sudden, one of them starts taking her shirt off. What are you doing? What are you doing? Both these ladies are on the path to being in better shape, but it's not exactly a situation where I'd be just shedding.
They're not quite vegan yet.
I'm not shedding my shirt at every moment if I'm either one of them. And for what it's worth, I keep a shirt on for the entirety of my time in the gym, which shows a lot of self-restraint on my part. And I'm like, what is going on? So one of them is taking her shirt off, has a sports bra on, thank God, and then proceeds to practice a headstand with a yoga mat, in the middle of the gym, and which is fine. Now there's no shirt on, and I'm trying to ignore, and all of a sudden I hear counting. She counts to 100 out loud. Anyways, that's my story from the gym.
It reminds me. Remember when they had James Jones, former Packer receiver, mic'd up, and how he talked to himself during the game, and apparently that helped him not drop 7 passes a game like he did early in his career. Can you imagine working out and just talking to yourself to each their own, but
you can't count in your head. You can you could take your shirt off and do a headstand in a public-ish gym, but you can't count in your head. Come on, man.
We found a common theme about self-awareness in this country over the last couple of years that it's declining and steeply.
I have a great friend of mine who was a roommate of mine in college who had just a tremendous lack of, it wasn't necessarily self-awareness, but just awareness in general. And we would always joke that he was the Madden player with a 0 awareness rating who the ball would just hit him in the head because the awareness rating was so low, and that's what would happen when that happened. Anyways, do you have a story that you need to share, or are we good for the day?
No. I broke my glasses playing basketball last week, so I've been kind of mending them and not playing hoops.
It's been a great excuse for you to avoid.
That's true. That's true.
The buzzsaw that is me on the basketball court.
I needed
17-1
recently. My jump shot needed a break because my bad habits were starting to emerge.
We'll be back with you early Monday morning. Make sure you download that podcast. You get all of the info that you need before anyone else does. Enjoy week 7. Peace out, guys. Thank you.